next few weeks, we returned to the underground chamber every day to collect more data. Rankin continued to document the inscriptions etched into the stone circumference of the structure, while we assisted Feldman in his study of the dead units, all of us ignoring that mysterious black ball that was hanging in the air in the middle of the chamber. That dark, shimmering mass that filled us with such irrational dread whenever we glimpsed it. During the second week, something happened. We noticed that one of the two working light beams, for lack of a better term, had grown substantially weaker and slimmer than its counterpart, while the other beam had maintained its solidness and diameter, which was measured to be exactly 38 millimeters, about that of a silver dollar. This one was now only about 24 millimeters, about the diameter of a quarter, and no longer shone with the same strong, luminous quality that we had observed when we first entered the space. Also, we noted, the unit that evidently produced the beam was no longer generating a smooth, steady low hum.
That's what happened when I checked the link. I've checked it 3 times now. That's how it's coming up on my end, so I don't know if when people click on those links to check for themselves it's being obstructed as well. But I'm just proving what I'm showing.
The faltering beam grew increasingly dim and weak, until it
I'll
was
just do it again for you. Just clicking on the picture this time.
Reduced to an infinitesimal and nearly indiscernible yellow flicker.
Okay.
The filament of a dying light bulb.
So it's not on giving out false data. Someone's interfering with it.
We were all awoken by the most
There you
unusual
go.
phenomena.
3rd time checked.
The ground was shaking beneath us, with a low, threatening rumble. It was an earthquake. A not unheard of but still remarkably rare occurrence in Antarctica. Rare enough to garner our surprise and concern. We grouped up outside of our tents in the sub-zero darkness, each of us looking to the other in wide-eyed alarm.
Schumann monitor
After about
link
10 minutes,
for yesterday.
the shaking stopped and the ground was still. We returned to our tents, all worried that perhaps the quake had potentially damaged the structure, or perhaps obstructed it in some way to prevent us from continuing our research. To our immense relief, when we had returned the next day, we discovered the chamber was apparently unharmed by the upheaval of the night before. Duval was the first to notice that the failing beam had finally winked out, and its unit had fallen silent. Robertson commented that perhaps the earthquake had finished the job of stilling the faltering machinery. We resumed our inspection of the chamber and the units.
2,
After
3.
3 weeks and much probing and tinkering,
It's on about 3:45 GMT.
With our assistance, he was able to remove the outer frame of the device and display its internal components. What he saw left him baffled. He studied the complex-looking constituents that lay therein in much depth and told us at length that he couldn't make heads or tails of what he was seeing. He suggested that he dismantle the components of the unit and take them back with us so he could study them in the much better equipped facilities of the laboratory back at the main installation, which would be far more suitable for his purpose. We agreed. It had been nearly a month by then, and we had pretty well collated all the data that we could have at that point. Rankin had finished documenting the etchings, and our supplies were running low. We universally agreed that it was time to return to the outpost. I called our pilot, Nash, on the radio unit that we had brought with us, and we waited up top with our gear for the helicopter to arrive. After 2 hours, we finally heard the unmistakable sound of its approach. Nash ferried the 6 of us back to the compound, and the rest of the team greeted us with a hero's welcome, listening enthralled as we recounted our latest discovery. Feldman showed them the disassembled components that he had brought back with us. Their reaction was one of disbelief. By then, the Antarctic winter was setting in, and the sunlight was steadily diminishing daily. We decided that further exploration of the ruins would not be safely feasible until the
Local
following
media
spring.
this morning.
It didn't really matter. We had already collected a wealth of data, enough to keep us all occupied until then. We decided to bunker down in our outpost and begin analyzing our finds. Feldman set about studying the strange apparatus that we had recovered from the chamber, and Rankin began the arduous task of transcribing the wall etchings.
Exactly where I was sitting
To
yesterday.
decipher their meaning with the aid of his computer. The
Now
next
it's
2
got a
months passed without incident.
£150 million
We went
project
about
to
our tedious
regenerate
routine
it.
daily task, fighting the growing sense of isolation and boredom that comes with being confined in an Antarctic shelter for months on
After
end, as the polar winter raged outside. The only thing I noticed that struck me as peculiar was Rankin's seemingly abrupt change in mood. About a month after we had returned to the base, his usual affable, outgoing demeanor shifted suddenly, and he became sullen and withdrawn, keeping mostly to himself during our leisure time, and not joining us in our normal recreational activities. He seldom spoke, and when pressed to do so, his answers were short and absent-minded, as if his mind was preoccupied with something else. He began to lose weight and grow pale and disheveled, and the rest of us began to fear for his well-being. We wondered if he was spending too much time
let's see what they're saying about this.
and were concerned that he was so engrossed in his endeavor that he was exhausting himself, both mentally and physically. Carlyle suggested that perhaps it was cabin fever setting in. Regardless, we all agreed we needed to keep an eye on him in case his condition worsened.
So they're using the kids to attack the elderly.
The horror began. That afternoon, Feldman summoned the whole team to his lab. He was utterly confounded. He admitted to us that after weeks of attempting to analyze the components of the cryptic device, he had been unsuccessful in his endeavor to understand how the unit worked or even what purpose its individual parts served. It went completely over his head. A technology so intricate and radically advanced that...
Don't forget there's been a release in the school by my grandsons home, and also in the school by my home. Deliberate.
Better outfitted scientific institutes where perhaps someone else would have more luck in breaking its enigma. But we were all dubious that they would stand any better a chance than he had. Feldman was one of the most skilled and insightful technical engineers that I
So they're testing children,
I spotted Rankin
and the children are being
I was greatly alarmed by what I saw. His eyes
infected,
to express a look of hopeless doom and despair.
shall we say,
His face was
because someone's been tinkering with it down at Porton Down,
his hands kept snapping
where they took the original Princess liner.
Troubled, I filed out of the lab with
I
the
will
others,
call them victims
resolved that tomorrow I would confront Rankin
for testing.
and query him on the source of his distress.
Porton Down is run by QINETIIQ.
I was awakened in my quarters by a sound that sent horror coursing through my veins and my heart like a shot of adrenaline.
60% owned by E2R herself.
A sound of pure animalistic agony and terror that slowly faded into a weak groan. Jumping up, I frantically rifled through the contents
So
of
that's
my
enough of
dresser
that.
until I
Let's
found
have
a
a
pistol
quick
that I
look
put
at
there.
a
Leaving my
national
quarters,
media
I
site.
cautiously made my way down the hall to where
Let's
the
record
scream
time.
had
We've got
originated
4
from.
minutes.
As I passed the quarters of
This
my
is just an
compatriots,
easy go-to site that I use.
their doors
If anyone
all
wants
stood
to look
open,
any further, they
and
can
each room had been
use other
transformed
sites, if
into
you see
an
what I mean.
abattoir. My teammates appeared to have all been slaughtered in their sleep. Their corpses sprawled across their beds in gruesome repose.
Track and trace,
Later, Jennings, Whitman,
surveillance,
Feldman, and all the others.
tracking people's movements,
I arrived at the end of the hall,
monitoring whole areas,
in the center of the
using
installation.
antisocial dispersal orders under Investigatory Powers
The
Act,
helicopter pilot was crawling
suspicion
across
of
the
a
floor,
crime.
leaving a trail of blood, his intestines dragging behind him. Rankin, his eyes wild, a frenzied look of pure insanity on his face, was following after him with a fire axe. Both it and
You
he
getting it
spotted
yet?
with fresh red. I stood there, transfixed in shock at this macabre tableau. distantly realizing that Nash's quarters were adjacent to my own at the end of the corridor. The madman Jenkins had been
Getting it
methodically
yet?
slipping into our rooms one by one as he had made his way down the hall, butchering us as we slumbered, defenseless and unaware of the danger. Something must have alerted Nash and he had tried to escape. If not for his scream to warn me of the threat, I would surely have been next. Nash noticed me standing in the recreation room doorway like a statue, and began crawling in my direction, reaching his hand up to me in supplication, a desperate, pleading expression on his pained features. Behind him, the lunatic Rankin hoisted the axe high, his teeth bared in a rictus of concentration, and swung down into the prone figure's skull with a sickening crunch. Rankin looked up, seeing me, and began to wrench the axe free from Nash. Snapping out of my stupor, I remembered the pistol in my hand and
You see what's going on here yet?
firing instinctively.
There you go. Let's get rid of the media.
He stumbled back, dropping the axe and collapsing to the floor, groaning. I approached him slowly, keeping a cautious distance, the gun still aimed at him. I found my voice.
I'm just listening to a bit of a story.
He looked at me.
Since I can't sleep, 5 days to go until court case, and we're on the sleep deprivation tactic again.
He was shot through the heart and
Roxy got disturbed at
his voice
just after 3 o'clock after I've been asleep a couple of hours and haven't been able to get back to sleep since. So someone's playing games here.
better for all of us, all of humanity, to die
But the inner energy is stronger.
before
It's not working for them. All it's doing is harming the outer body and increasing the strength in the inner body, which is gonna backfire spectacularly for them.
translated the inscriptions almost 2 months ago. I know what they mean. It's more awful than you can even imagine. He looked at me
So
with
I'm
a
gonna listen to this and
expression.
then try and get another couple of hours
Please,
rest.
Travis.
Nice honey and ginger tea,
You'll understand.
soothe my throat.
And then you'll wish that you would let me kill you. He groaned and his head fell back.